Hello everybody, Walter here. Welcome to episode 19 of my Let's Play series for Satisfactory 1.0. In the last episode, we finally finished in the aluminium facility in the swamp. And today I would like to build a, refining facility for pretty much all of the leftover materials, like copper and iron, which is going to take a decent amount of effort, since, while the recipes are not overly complicated, I will need a lot of setup to, refine the amounts I'm going to need for the rest of this playthrough here. So, without further ado, let's jump back into the game and have a look where we left off last time. And here we are, back at our main base with the hub. Now, first things first, for our plans today, we are going to need a couple alternate recipes, so let's unlock these. I'm going to start with the cheap silica, which replaces some of the quartz with limestone. Then we have the pure deuterium, which replaces some of the ore with water. Similarly, we have the pure quartz. Then we have the pure copper. And then, I think it's a bit further down, we have the pure iron ingots. And with those we can start a few more researches. And now it's time to prepare the blueprint, which is going to make use of most of those recipes here, which are basically all running in a refinery with water and a solid, outputting a solid. So I am going to need a blueprint for it. Now, I'm also going to show you how I make this live, as I was asked for that in a comment, and I think this is actually a good example for how to make a blueprint like this here. So, let's get started. First of all, we need the Mark II blueprint designer. We're also going to need to fly around, so let's add some power at the back there. And now, first things first, we are going to need a foundation layer at the bottom. And since I already have a good idea how I want to do this, I'm going with just 4 wide. Then 4 meters above, we need the next layer. For that, I'm going to use the metal grid. Slightly move to the side here. Then we have a 4 wide gap in the middle. And that is basically the perfect spacing for refineries. Now, before I add the middle parts, we are going to need a couple of those here. Then I'm going to soup this up twice. Like so. And that gives us the perfect height for a small billboard, which needs to be moved inwards a little bit. Like so. Then I can remove these again. Now it's time for the foundations. Then I need to set these here, so we don't need a symbol, we also don't need any text, and we need a color. And since this is mostly for copper, let's go with a light coppery red. Maximum emission and maybe some glossiness. Doesn't really matter too much, actually. Same there. That's the uplighting. And yeah, now it's time for the refineries. Let's grab these. Just need that to be in the middle, and that is enough space for 4. Then, now at this point I usually would grab a conveyor wall, align it with the outputs here, and bridge those gaps with normal walls that I just move around a little bit. Then on the other side, I would have a 4 wide and then 5 wide space, where I put my catwalks on top. And then if I really wanted to have some lighting even, then I could just add a small billboard below and light this up. And then it's just connecting the solids and potentially the liquids. But for this blueprint here I have a slightly different plan, and that requires me to actually go up and not down. So, first things first, we are going to need a temporary floor on the outside. Then we are going to need the conveyor walls with the 2. Just need to move this in front of the inputs and the outputs. So, saving is done. So that was the lag spec from just a moment ago. Let's continue. So, now, this is the input side. So we are going to need the splitters over here. So let's add these in the correct spots. And then we need our mergers over here. Now, on the input side, we are also going to need liquids. So let's add some walls. Those are temporary. And then let's grab one of these here, and I need to go at least to the side here, I think. Yeah, that looks good. So let's put these here in the correct spots. Then I can get rid of these here again. These can be connected. And then color coded for water. You can already see this is going to be slightly different than my other blueprints. Now I need the input side. Those are just Mark 1 conveyors. The output side should be at least Mark 2 conveyors, I think. Then Mark 5. At some point I'll have to upgrade some of those to Mark 6. And I think on the input side it's actually just Mark 5s. Yeah, also Mark 5s. Okay, that looks halfway decent. Now, on the next layer up, I am going to start with a wall again. This time, I'm going only to build this for one life and then just skip ahead once I have that. So, that one here will hold another billboard for lighting. So, let's add that, and then let's maybe add a little bit of a background. So, let's see. Yeah, let's go with that. Maybe a different color. Yeah, that looks strange. Maybe something in the green. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. And now we have this little slit there. This needs to be filled in with a bit of a wall. So, if I move this just half a step, rotate it around, add another one on top, and then build the same top like so. I have a nice little setup there, and then I can remove the wall behind. So, and that makes it even look pretty interesting from the back, and it doesn't really interfere with anything annoying over there. So, that part more or less done. So, next up we have the power. So, let's add the power poles. Almost forgot about this part. That way I can chain them together very easily and without any real issue. So, and it looks pretty decent, I think. Now, on top of this here, I still need the catwalk. So, this one goes there. Just need to make sure this is properly aligned with the floor below. I think that is the correct spacing here. Yeah, that looks good. And that should also be aligned with that floor here. And I can move this all the way to over here. And that is pretty good, actually. Now we still have those gaps here, and those are easily filled in using some of these pillars here. Which also shouldn't cause any set fighting up here if I am lucky enough. Now on this side here, I am going to have to do something else too. And that is, I have this hole here which is not in use. I'm thinking of just closing it off with a pillar. Yep, that looks good. And then we have one last gap that needs to be filled in, and that is maybe with a metal pillar here. This gap down there. So let's see. 2, 3, 4. Then just need to move this all the way to the end there. And that looks pretty decent, actually. And yeah, this means I can also now get rid of this temporary floor here, which makes accessing all of this here from the bottom easier again. And yeah, now I just need to make these adjustments here for the other 3 refineries, basically. And a few minutes later, this is now done. I've also already set in the recipe for the pure copper, changed the color scheme, and after adding a little bit of texture on top of those pillars, since they were looking a bit strange ending plain with the catwalk, I've already saved this as mass refining copper. And now I'm just going to make a few copies of this with changed recipes and color scheme for iron, caterium, red concrete, and quartz. So, looks like I kinda forgot about one of the alternate recipes, so let's get back to the map and unlock just that one. Namely, I'm talking about the steamed copper sheets, twice the output for, again, adding water and a decent number of refineries. Yep. So, then we are going to need to load in the recipe for copper ingots, and then I'm just going to change that setting here to the steam copper sheets, and I'm also going to overclock this to 200%. And then copy paste it a few times. That works out. I'm overclocking these because I did a little bit of planning and I wouldn't be able to fit those all into my plant area if I don't overclock them. And that are the steamed copper. So. This goes under mass refining. And there we go. So, now before I continue with building anything, there is one, or actually 2 blueprints I should also work on. That go on the outside of this. So, one that just closes off the side here, basically. And then one that closes off the front and the back. Although those I might want to wait a bit for. Oh, that's invalid placement. Is there anything? Ah, that seems to be in the way. Well, let's get that out of the way. And now we should be able to place this one here. Yep, that looks pretty good, I must say. Seems to be a little bit the different height, likely because of that. So, yeah, not going to bother with that too much. Let's add some power wire at the back there. And now, how do I want to do this? Now, the lazy way would be just copying what I have built over here. I might actually just do that. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to quickly copy the outside of this here over here. And just like this here. And instead of rebuilding everything, I just copied in one of my existing blueprints and basically removed everything except for the wall. Now, once I was done with that, I also built a corresponding setup for the front and the back of the build, as well as an outer corner. Now, there might be up to 2 inner corners, but depending on how it works out, I will have to improvise that and can't really plan that out ahead of time. Or I might not even have to do anything at all, essentially. But we'll see when we get to that. Now, the next step is figuring out where I'm going to build my actual factory, and including the outer walls, this will require a 41 by 41 foundation square with just one of the corners cut out, which either is going to go into this general area here, or potentially in this area over there. I'll have to plan this out carefully though, since I will have to need access to all of the copper I can get in this general area here. So I have to make sure I'm not overlapping with any of that. So that took a good while, but I now have a decent area laid out. As I said, one of the corners can be left out, which nicely fits with the lake over there, so I didn't even dip into the water. Fortunately, over here I didn't have the space required for all of that, but I think this is a pretty decent spot. Now, it's time to get going, and the first thing I need to figure out is where do I want my inputs, where do I want my outputs. I think I will have the inputs there, the outputs there, and then the logistics floor will connect everything for the inputs to this corner, or somewhere around there, and the output somewhere over here. And then I can do further processing over here, at which point, in some of the following episodes, I'm going to have to get rid of my temporary production lines over there. But for now, let's get started. And the first thing is just adding some power wire so I can float over all of this here and don't have to use the jetpack. On a second thought, I only really need power on this edge here, and then I can run it along the modules themselves when I build them, which means I need to do less cleanup later on. I've also planned out what I am going to need, which I've written down here. And the first row for now will be just copper. So 32 copper refineries. So in other words, 8 of the blueprints we have prepared. So for that we are going to likely need a little bit of a starting point there in the middle. And then I can grab the refinery for that. Need to make sure this is the correct way around, which this should be. Okay, and then it should be half and half. So I can later on just add my outer sides and corners. So that looks good. Then I can already get rid of this here. And yeah, that is looking pretty decent. So then we need one more of these here. And that should also be hopefully in the correct direction. Of course, it's not the correct direction. No, it's the correct direction. Let's move them together. And now, as I was saying, I'm going to string along the power. Well, let's connect this to the first one. Obviously, I'm going to do this below the floor at some point. But for now, the quick and dirty solution is enough. Then I'm going to need the belt on this side. And on this side, as well as the power, not the power, the pipeline. And yeah, now I just need to do this a few more times until I'm done with this first row here. And there we go. About, well, 12% or so of the copper refineries are now all placed. Yeah, we are going to need a lot of copper. But let's continue on. So this is the first row. And now I need, for the moment, 6 more only copper rows, and after that it's going to get a little bit more interesting. But let's first get in these rows into place. And there we go. Wait. let's aim for an achievement. Yay! We have the achievement. Okay. Now, as I was saying, the 7 rules are now done. I also, unfortunately, am running a bit low on stuff like encased industrial beams, motors, and even steel pipes. So we'll have to see. Maybe I will have to take a little break on building the rest of this and start collecting the raw materials. But for now, let's continue on. So this next row is going to be a bit shorter and will contain another 20 refineries for copper, or 5 modules, and then 8 modules, 8 refineries or 2 modules for copper sheets, which I had to upgrade to complete overclocking by 250%. I did a little bit of miscalculation there, but now everything should work out as intended. So, anyway, next row, 5 copper and then 2 copper sheet modules. And once those are in place, we need to interconnect them in a very specific way. And there we go, all of the refineries are finally in place. Now, while I was waiting on some of the materials to be produced in sufficient amounts, I went ahead and already moved all of the pipes wherever required through a floor hole onto this lower layer here, where I will later on have to add a little bit of a distribution center, since all of these pipes here need some strange numbers. So 450 here, 200 there, 320 there, and it's not getting much better. So I will have to work a bit with some intelligent overflow mechanics, but that will come a bit later. But I was already mentioning connecting the copper ingot production with the copper sheet production. Namely, the last 3 of those 5 modules here for the copper ingots are connected, or will be connected, to the input of the copper sheets. And the first 2 modules have already been split off and are, if you look in here, not connecting to the following modules, but instead going down here and outputting just 300 copper per minute in this instance. The other rows, on the other hand, produce a whole 1200 or a full Mark 6 belt. So, as I mentioned, I will have to upgrade many of those later. But what do I need to do? Well, I already, as I said, have everything prepared. So all I need to do to connect them is just run one belt from the output of the iron ingots to the input of the copper sheets. So pretty straightforward, no real surprise there. Now, next on the agenda is iron and caterium. And for that I need 4.5 modules for iron and 2.5 for caterium. So I'm likely going to build 5 modules for the iron and then just convert half of that into caterium. And once that is done, we're going to get into the quartz and limestone. And that are all of the metals handled, which means it's now time for, at least in the beginning, 4 modules for concrete and 3 modules for quartz, and then I will have to modify the area where the 2 meet for the silica production. And the next kind of obvious step is getting rid of the 2 refineries here and the adjacent logistics. And now we will have to replace them with 2 assemblers for the cheap silica, which means we need to actually handle 2 solids. So let's see. Yeah, let's grab that from over there. And that needs to be handled right here. I think that is the correct spot. Then I need to go 1 higher. Or actually 2 meters higher. Put down the second set. And hopefully that works halfway decent. Okay, that looks pretty good actually. Then I can connect these here and these here. That is looking also pretty good. Then I need input. Alright. there. And then for the actual inputs here, I only need the Mark 1 belt. Oh, come on. And then those are the inputs. Now for the outputs, let's get rid of these here. Then let's replace them with the single output, which means I need to get rid of these here in some way. We'll have to figure that out in a moment. Now let's get through here, and that shouldn't be too difficult actually. There's nothing fancy going on here after all. That is in line. That is in line. Then we have technically a Mark II would be enough, but for now let's just go with the highest build we have. As we have been doing this all the time already. Now I need to get to the inside again. And put down my 2 assemblers. The first one here, and that should be at least somewhat centered, I would say. Is this centered? Let's give it half a notch. Yep, that looks good. Okay, then we are going for the cheap silica, as already mentioned. Then I just need to connect these here. And wait a second. Did this nudge in the wrong direction? That is strange. No idea what happened there. So, then, outputs. And then I need the power. And for that we are going to grab one of these and place it roughly in line with the input there. Is that in line? Let's give it a shot. Yep, that looks good. Then we do the same over here. I think right there looks good. Yeah. And then let's reconnect to this one over there. Okay, that is looking pretty good indeed. Now, next up on the agenda is putting down some signs for the silica and so on. And also, I have to start on the outside of this entire thing. So, for that, we have our blueprints again. And let's actually start with the front and back here. So basically, I need to make sure this is the correct way around. Then I need to move this inwards, and as you can see, I slightly had to adjust this since I forgot the inner side of the wall earlier, but that is looking pretty good now. Then I will need to move that thing spot there. And we have our outer side also looking pretty nice, I must say. So, then another one here. And yet another one here, and that is where it starts to get interesting, as we have an inner corner here, which I haven't really prepared for. As you can see, there's a little bit of overlap. Although if we're lucky, I can fix that relatively simple. So I need an outer side for this. This needs to be rotated around. And it's already in a correct spot, I guess. Let's see, if we have this up like so, I mean, it does already look halfway decent. So if I were to simply ignore this part here in the middle, which is not too much of an issue, I guess, and were to just put that in and then remove the parts that are actually sticking out here. I mean, that already looks pretty decent, actually. Huh, looks like I don't really have to do anything about this. This kind of handled itself. So, then, let's just for the now also try this part here. And... wait, that's the wrong way. So. And... yeah, you get some set fighting down. I will have to live with that. And then the last one is for the corner here. Let's see, this way around, I guess. This time I'm actually putting all of this together, so this is a little bit of a test for me too. And that looks pretty good, I must say. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, next up. Going all the way around, although for now I think I'm going to leave at least this side here open for, or at least a few segments open, as will I do over there, since I still have some work to do. But for the most part, as I said, putting down some signs and putting the outer corner, and while I'm at it, I might as well figure out a decent way to extend this all the way to the floor without it looking too boring. And a good amount of trial and error later, I think I've come up with a design that looks quite decent, even if repeated all over the place. Neither too boring nor too exciting. I'm actually pretty happy with this design. Furthermore, I've already taken the time to connect all of the inputs and outputs over here via conveyors to the outside. Here we have the various outputs, so the ingots, the sheets, concrete and so on. And on the other side over there we have the various raw materials, so the ores, the raw quartz and the limestone. And the only thing left to collect in one area is basically just the water pipes, but that will have to happen on the opposite side of this entire thing, since the water will come from the ocean all over there. And yeah, not going to bother with this in this episode, as it's getting a bit late and I simply don't have the time for today. Now with that said, one last thing I can do is just close this part off here. And yep, looks good. And as I said, in the next episode we're going to handle the water and also all of the raw materials. And depending on how the time works out, I might start processing some of the refined materials, but we'll have to see how that turns out. And that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share and comment. It really helps with the algorithm. Independent of that, I wish you a nice day, and well, see ya.